Evening and welcome to the public hearing of council pertaining to bylaw number 21-17, which is being held July 7th, 2021, and it's starting at 7:03 p.m. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to bylaw number 21-17 now open at 7:03 p.m. Can we have a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda?
Yes, Your Worship, I would move that we adopt the agenda for the public hearing.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw number 21-17 proposes to redesignate approximately 3.93 acres of R1N1 to R2, low-density residential district, and approximately 0.022 acres from P1, public service district, to R2. Public notices for bylaw 21-17 were published in the Strathmore Times on June 23rd and June 30th, 2021. On February 26th and March 4th, 2021, notification of the upcoming public hearing was posted on the town's social media sites. Thank you.
Thank you. The following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation shall be the administration, those in favor of the bylaw, Urban Systems, Jane Power, Scott Kleinsasser, Urban Systems, those opposed to the bylaw, Cam Wright, a resident, and any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes. There will be no debating the bylaw. To date, no letters of support and 6 opposed have been received. And does the administration have any comments?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I have prepared a brief presentation to accompany administration's report for the public hearing of bylaw 21-17. So I'll show you the location, give a quick look at the background, review the proposed amendments, show a map of the proposed redesignations, and then review the comments we received and then present our recommendation. So I've got up on the screen now the key map. That just shows the location of where the parcel is in relation to Kinsman Park and then Park Lane Drive. So the ranch developer has initiated phase 5 of their development, which includes this redesignation request and a subdivision application. In 2011, sections of this parcel were redesignated to the R1N single detached residential narrow lot district and P1 public service districts to prepare for the eventual subdivision and development of this 30-acre parcel. And that's the current land use districts there. The developer is proposing this redesignation to follow the change in the housing market. Their proposal will allow for a mix of single and semi-detached homes. The housing composition will be similar to Edgefield's Phase 2, which was redesignated in 2019 to a mix of R1N and R2 land use district. The R1N district allows for lots with a site width as narrow as 11 meters, and the R2 district allows for lots with a site width as narrow as 7.5. There are a couple of related issues that administration considered when reviewing the application. The first is the loss of on-street parking due to the narrower lots, but between architectural controls and semi-detached housing, administration's concerns around lack of on-street parking is alleviated. Another concern is whether an increase in density will put undue pressure on town infrastructure. Administration estimates that the number of additional lots this redesignation would create is 5 or fewer, so the increase is not substantial. The other part of this redesignation application is being proposed to accommodate administration's request to widen the access into a future municipal reserve parcel to make it easier for the town to maintain. The developer is proposing to realign the development to move the center future cul-de-sac to the west. This will effectively close off one access and widen the second. And that is the map that shows where the proposed redesignations are. None of the circulated agencies voiced any concerns regarding the proposed redesignation. They will be recirculated for the subdivision, though some did preemptively provide comments regarding it. So Alberta Transportation provided comment after administration did submit the report. They granted a variance to section 14 and 15 of the Subdivision and Development Regulations. These two sections control the development that occurs within 1.6 kilometers of the provincial highway. Town administration voiced no concerns regarding the proposed land use changes, and discussions have been ongoing regarding the subdivision. Administration received a number of concerns from residents regarding the proposed intersection at Ranch Gate and Park Lane Drive. Administration explained that the second access is part of the subdivision application, and that was the venue that their comments and concerns would be considered through. Any resident who did make comment regarding the intersection was still asked if they wished for their comments to be included in the public hearing package.
Councillor Montgomery, or sorry, Councillor Corbeil, question?
Yeah, I have no idea what she's referencing. We can't see what's going on.
Okay.
So I'm kind of lost.
Councillor Sobel, you're the same?
Exactly. If you could reference, if it's part of the package that we received, then if you could reference what we're looking at specifically, because we're not seeing what you folks are seeing.
For sure, my apologies.
Thank you.
Oh, shoot.
You could just refer them to the page you're on?
Yeah. Okay, unfortunately, I don't know what the pages
We're
are
on
off the
page
top.
8 of 15 right
Thank
now.
you.
Councillors?
Yeah, oh, bummer, okay. Yeah, oh, thank you, that'd be awesome. All right, my apologies. So the redesignation map is on page 8 of the public hearing package. So administration did receive a few inquiries regarding the redesignation, primarily for clarification of what areas were being redesignated, when the land use had changed to the R1N district, what the proposed development was for the site, and whether there was a significant change in the residential density. To provide clarification and to set boundaries for the public hearing, this public hearing is being held to discuss the proposal to redesignate parts of Southeast, 14, 24, 25 west of the 4th, to the R2, R1N, and P1 land use districts only. The second access is a requirement through the subdivision application. The proposed redesignation doesn't impact the density significantly enough to change whether a second access is required. Administration is taking the residents' comments and concerns seriously and have been brainstorming how to mitigate them whilst ensuring the safety for the future residents of the ranch development. Administration is recommending that council take into consideration all information received at the public hearing today regarding Bylaw 21-17, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw, the Ranch Phase 5 redesignation. That does conclude my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any councillors have any questions? Councillor Cox, Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could we talk a little bit more about the parking part? You went really fast, and I wasn't following. So you're saying because you're making the street, the lots narrower, there's not a lot of room on the street. So where are they going to park?
So on so if you look at page 8 of the public hearing package, you can see on the west side of Ranch Gate that will all be available for on-street parking. And then on the east side, through architectural controls and the land use itself, the R2, what will happen is that the houses along that street will be the semi-detached, and so the driveways will be conjoined. So there will still be space between every other lot for some on-street parking.
Okay. So you're meaning here? Parking?
Yep. So primarily on this side,
Okay.
and then based on how the driveways are lined up, like they'll be together, there will be a bit of space between the driveways that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
So how many additional residences are there being planned for that were not, like the original plan for a certain number, and how many more has that grown to now?
We estimate it's about 5 with the change from the R1N to the R2, and that's including all 3 locations, like all 3 blocks of the R2 district.
Okay. And I understand that there's like some rule that regarding access for a certain number of people, they have to have kind of road access. When did that rule change, like partway through, like, you know, like in the last number of years that, you know, like, so when this development was planned, it was on side of those regulations, and now it's not meeting those regulations as it is?
The document that we're pulling this information from was updated in 2006. That's the Calgary Fire Fire and Emergency Access document that they have, and it was updated recently in 2020, I believe. So that's where we're pulling the information from, as well as the NFPA. I'm unsure when the NFPA was last updated.
Okay, but as it was originally kind of envisioned without, like, I'm wondering about, like, you know, because right now it's planned to access Park Lane Drive. And
I
that's,
think, sorry to interrupt, Councillor Montgomery, but I think this bylaw strictly deals with the rezoning of the sizes of the properties. It doesn't deal with the roadway. And in fact, people who are opposing the bylaw who wish to talk about that road, that's kind of jumping the gun, because we're not looking at the road at tonight's public hearing. This is strictly to do with land use and the size of these properties going to R1N and R2.
right, I'm just asking for background about the number of people that will be in the area now
So,
as opposed to before.
Do you know how many people will be living in this new area that could happen?
I believe it's about 133 new lots throughout all 3 upcoming phases.
Okay, thank you. Chuck?
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Councillor Montgomery. Just for everybody's information, administration is going to prepare some more information about any technical comments, road comments, etc. And we'll be coming to the committee of the whole meeting next week to answer any subdivision technical questions. We'll have all that information for you then.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot.
Subsequent to that, will he still here?
Councillor Peterson.
Just subsequent to that, Your Worship, just because those letters, I know that you note some of the letters are for zoning or redesignation and some are for the subdivision. I'm wondering, just for people who have access to the package, if it wouldn't be helpful, Your Worship, to just designate which those letters apply to when we come to the public hearing or in the agenda, so we know, you know, which, because some of the letters aren't related to the rezoning.
Okay.
And if we just know that ahead of time and the public knows. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. So you're thinking for that tonight, they should know which ones?
Just, because, sorry, Your Worship, some of them don't relate, right? But the people that put those forward saw it as having a connection. And so they wanted, I'm assuming from Megan's comments, they wanted them included here. And you respectfully did that. But for council's sake and for any of the public, if you just designate which fit into which slot, that would be helpful.
Yeah, some of the letters do have a little bit of both in them.
If you could just give us direction,
For sure,
that'd be
yeah.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions from councillors for Megan? Megan, just a question as far as these. Is there any concern from staff, from you, from Chuck, as far as the balance of R1, N1 lots and R2 and R2? I look at this drawing and the whole entire area is R1N, R2. Are there any things that should be a cautionary warning to us? Is there any concerns over having that entire section be R2 and R1N? I know one of the letters I read talked about parking and vehicles on the street. Do we have any other concerns as far as that type of housing in this entire section?
No, none were raised when I circulated to other administrative departments. Throughout the discussions that we had internally as well, there weren't any. If you look at Edgefield, like that was done in 2019, I believe, it's a very similar makeup with R2 on one side and R1N on the other. And I don't believe we've received any complaints, or there's not been any pressing concerns recently, though I could be wrong. No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions from councillors? Seeing none, is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak? Jane?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it okay if I start now, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jane Power. I'm a planner with Urban Systems and the applicant on this land use redesignation. I'd like to thank you for your consideration of this application tonight. And with me also is Scott Kleinsasser from Anthem United. They're the owner and developer of the ranch community. I'll have just a few brief comments, and both of us will be available afterwards to answer any questions that council has. First of all, I'd like to thank Megan Williams and Chuck Proctor for their comprehensive presentations. We've worked closely with them throughout the process, and we very much appreciate their collaboration. As you heard, the intention of introducing the areas of R2 into the ranch was to provide more variety and choice to the community. As we place the R2 around the periphery of the community, it's anticipated to blend in with the R1N lots, and as well, the developer will be applying architectural controls. Now, with respect to parking, I can share a photo that might give sort of a street view. If I could share my screen with you. I think after a year, I'd be really good at this. I've got a photo, and what we're showing here is where we are. Can everybody see that now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So we're looking at, again, how the driveways will be coupled along with the garages, and with the R2 development as well. Anthem United is proposing to do only semi-detached dwellings, which is the side-by-side, and not duplex, which is also allowed under R2, but duplex is up and down, and they would be only doing the semi-detached. So with that, there's an opportunity where we can group the garages and put the driveways together, creating similar, more of a single family development where there is a larger green space and lawn and garden area on the street that will accommodate parking. And as well, I could also share with you, we have, this is a sort of a general elevation in order that can sort of demonstrate what the architecture could look like and work with the development to make sure that it blends in with the balance of the community. So those are just the two that I wanted to share with you tonight. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to address them through the chair. And as well, I could turn the presentation over to Scott, and if he has any comments as well.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for having us here. As Jane mentioned, I'm Scott Kleinsasser. I'm here on behalf of the developer, Anthem United. Some of you may know us formally as United Communities. I wanted to give a brief history on our company, Anthem United. We are a residential developer that have completed many subdivisions throughout the greater Calgary region. We've serviced over 6,000 acres of land since the 1980s. Been invested in the Strathmore development since, I think we started the ranch in the early 2000s. And we have some commercial development over in Edgefield as well. So we're very invested in the Strathmore community, and we're hoping to continue that relationship. As Jane mentioned, and Megan, the redesignation from R1N to R2 is to add additional variety and a mixture of housing types similar to our previous phases within the ranch. Predominantly in the previous phases, it was a mixture of semi-detached villa type housing, as well as the single detached dwellings as well. Jane mentioned that we will be grouping the driveways to create those extra additional parking spaces and green spaces in front. And we have our own very stringent set of architectural controls within our company to make sure that that does happen. I'm here to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you very much.
Questions from councilors? Seeing none, thank you very much for your little presentation. And thank you, Megan. Is there anyone present who opposes the bylaw who wishes to speak? And at this time, I just want to remind those at home, if you're scheduled to speak, tonight's open house deals specifically with the land use bylaw. It does not deal with the roadway. So at a later time, there will be opportunities for you to be heard as far as that road that could be linking up to Park Lane Drive. So is there someone who wishes to speak who is opposing? Is that Mr. Wright? Are you one of our speakers tonight?
Yes, I am.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know whether anyone's been privy to the email I sent as requesting to speak. We're one of the original property owners on Park Lane Drive. There's been a lot of changeover over the time. We were aware when the Clybirds owned the land and they had a partnership with United Communities that it was going to be developed. At that time, a plan was presented that is still posted on the site. I don't know whether anyone's aware of that, where there were, was it 83 lots were actually proposed on that site. They were all R1. Okay, so there was a conflict between United and Stantec over soil removers, such and such, the commercial site. And so there was costs involved with that. They got into a legal dispute and that's their business. However, in this whole thing, this site sat empty for years and years and years. It was finally developed, or not developed, but graded in 2007, which has sat empty since. We've had no end of problems with the development officer of the town with dust control, everything else, until a picture was sent to the mayor at that time, which was Steve Grashik, where we couldn't see the railings on our decks. So that was looked after. Okay, so to move on now to this development, we were told that everything was going to be R1. Okay, and then I believe it was about 10 years ago or whatever it be, proposal came forward, and this was through Urban Systems. They had a public, I'm not going to say hearing forum at the Days Inn. It was presented that, okay, they wanted narrow lots, different things, but all the lots backing onto Park Lane Drive would remain as R1. It's an existing neighborhood, and I believe no consideration has been given to the existing community. I think we have to also determine with R2 lots that are going in here in R1 neighbor or R1 narrow lots neighboring on R1 lots or backing onto it, how does it exist, the pre-existing development? So 50 lots versus either 33-foot lots or 25-foot lots. I think we have to look at that. But over the course of the thing, I'm really disappointed because through United Communities and then through Urban Systems, we've been basically told a story which hasn't been true. And I have trouble with that. And I think everyone does if they're in the same position. I understand that, you know, I have issues about Park Lane, which we'll discuss later, as you have indicated, and that, but I believe the proposal itself needs a real good look at. I would encourage members on council to have a real good look at it and take the considerations for the existing residents into consideration. I guess I'd look at other lots. I mean, originally there was 83 lots in there. Ranch Garden and the Close have 92 lots. So now we have an existing, I believe we were told there was an additional 5 lots. There's actually 50 additional lots, which was first proposed in this area. So the residents of Park Lane now Our lots at that time, there was the bylaw in Strathmore, all lots were to be 50 feet. They're not 50 feet, they're 49 feet. So now we're putting lots behind us that are 33 feet. I know there's issues with revenue, everything else, but it's much like a townhouse. The city's got one and a half times the taxes on each lot. When you get down to it, you've created a higher density. There's more tax money coming from it, but there's more people coming from it. And you have more access issues, you have more egress issues. And I guess those are a lot of my concerns.
Thank you very much,
And-
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. You raised some good points and you've asked some really good questions.
May I say one more thing?
Certainly.
You know, and no disrespect to anyone, but when we get into narrower lots, and particularly our two lots, different things, what they've done in Edgefield for the lots over there, it's an attractive area. However, I don't see this happening with the soccer field, with everything else that's in there. We've heard we'll provide parking. You won't provide parking with one lot between houses because people now are driving 2 and 3 cars. The whole works, we've experienced that over the years with the soccer field, where when they have a lot of kids out for soccer, the parking area doesn't take it. They're parked along Park Lane, they're parked wherever they can park. You know, so I don't believe they've addressed the parking issues. I think it'll turn out to be a nightmare in that area, to be quite honestly. And as I said, no disrespect to anyone, but as we reduce the price of houses, the lots, and increase the density, you get into transient areas. And we've seen that happen before. You get into areas where, you know, some people are very proud in their houses, some people aren't. And that here we've got houses backing onto us. We would like people proud in the houses. We can't control that. However, I think with what they've done to turn around and turn an existing area with narrow lots right behind us, which was opposed before and United agreed with it. And urban developments at the time, the lip service they gave us agreed with it. And now we're into the issue where they're going to do what they want to do. So I guess that's all I can say at that. You know, I'm frustrated with the process because this is the third kick at the cap. And it seems to change every time we've turned around that it's more and more and more. But the pre-existing residents are the ones that are footing the bill because we have to look at considerations of property values, privacy. You have to look at considerations of safety, you know, and we're not going into the road thing. Different things, but I think all those considerations have to be looked after. And I don't think they've been addressed properly.
All your homes on Park Lane are walkouts.
You know, and all homes in Park Lanes, the area we're in, are all walkouts, and they're walkouts right up to the canal from Aspen Circle. So I think those are things that have to be considered.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. You raised some good points, asked some good questions, and there'll be an opportunity for councillors to ask some further questions in just a brief time.
Thank you. Would council provide a notice or whoever about the issues on Park Lane as well? Would we have advance notice of that so we can address that?
Sure. Let me just quickly ask administration, will there be a further information coming out to residents on Park Lane Drive concerning that roadway that could be potentially linking up to Park Lane Drive? Will that notice be going out for a future public hearing? How will that go, Megan?
Through your worship, I've sent out the circulation notice to the adjacent landowners, so the same folks who would have received notice for the public hearing. Those would have been mailed out Monday or Friday. So you should see a package coming in the mail to you hopefully this week with a lot more information regarding the subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Does that help, Mr. Wright?
Yes, thank you very much, as long as we have notice, because that's another issue.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak? Seeing and hearing none, do any councillors have any further questions? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. And thank you very much for the information, Megan. So a question I have for you is, what year did the plan change? Was it ever R1 on any plans? And when did that change to R1N?
There was a redesignation application approved in 2011 that would have changed the parcels from R1 to R1N.
Okay. And sorry if this is a bit technical, but what is the parking obligation for R1N? Like how many spots per unit? And then I'd like to know the same for R2 if you don't mind.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Just bear with us. Chuck's looking it up in the land use bylaw.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Montgomery. So the requirements for just a regular housing single detached, that's our R1N use, would be 2 parking stalls. And the requirement for housing semi-detached or duplexes is the same, 2 parking stalls per unit plus a portion for visitor parking if the parcel containing the unit does not adjoin a roadway. So they're the same rate in the land use bylaw. Thank you.
Okay. So so we're counting on the driveway being like 1 or 2 vehicles. Is that, and what is the distance between driveways? Do you know at this point?
It might be a good question for Jane or Scott if they're still on, but I think that most of these houses have a double garage at the front and a double driveway. Jane or Scott, do you want to jump in?
I can confirm that. So each R1N and R2, they will both be double attached garage homes with enough space for 2 cars on the driveways.
Okay.
So it would house 2 cars within the garage, 2 cars within the driveways.
Sorry, and Scott, do you know at this time, like what the distance is between like the concrete driveways? Like if we had people parking on the street?
Not at this point. That picture that Jane had previously would be very similar. It would be enough for 1 to 2 vehicles.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess my question is, if this bylaw is not passed at this point, bearing in mind Councillor Montgomery's question regarding when the change in land use came in. So the only difference would be, am I correct in hearing that the only difference would be 5 less homes?
Through the worship, yeah, that's my approximation is about 5.
Thank you.
Sorry, am I missing something, Megan? I thought at one point early on tonight you said that there would be 133 homes, as opposed to what Mr. Wright said of 83 originally in the United plan that they had seen?
Through your worship, the full build out for the 3 phases, which if you look on page 8, includes all of the cul-de-sacs and the roads and whatnot in there, is going to be an additional 133 homes. With the R2 redesignation, the proposal, it's going to add approximately 5 lots. It's going to be 100 with this redesignation, the proposal would be 133 lots. Without it, it would just be 5 fewer, give or take.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
Thanks, Your Worship. I can just jump in here too. Mr. Wright may have been referencing a time where these lands were R1N, and in 2011 they were changed to R1. Or sorry, Mr. Wright may be, referring to when these lands were R1. And the change to R1N occurred in 2011, so that 80-something might have been the first time that this was pitched. In 2011, it changed to R1N. We don't have a lot number then, just because there wasn't a subdivision proposed for when it was all R1N. Thank you.
Thank you, and if I can provide some context, I believe in 2011, and Councillor Sobel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Calgary Regional Partnership was in existence, but the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board had not been created yet. And I know there was a lot of impetus to follow Calgary's density levels as far as housing. And so as a council, we fell in line with that. Now, in that meantime, obviously, things change and times change, and we do have a great deal of land that's been annexed for the town. So a question for administration is, what do we do in the future if there becomes a need or a philosophy change of council concerning R1 lots being something that might attract more residents? Like, what are we keeping that in our minds as well? I think you and I have talked about lot sizes as far as attracting people to Strathmore. So that's something maybe we can talk at a later date, but I just wanted to raise that with you. But I do wonder, and again, I'll ask Chuck and Megan, I do wonder if there was any way, if there was any thought, or was it ever raised that in light of Mr. Wright's question, on the R1 lots that are existing there on Park Lane that would back up, was there anything brought forward as far as a buffer zone of, say, R1 lots and then R1N and that kind of a thing? Or is this just the thing that they've presented? There was never any other discussion?
Thank you, Your Worship. We're just responding to the existing zoning today, and the existing zoning right now as we speak is the R1N, and that changed in March. And tonight they're proposing, some minor amendments to the Municipal Reserve P1 park space right behind that, which might help. And they're also proposing those R2 changes.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery? So any other questions from councillors? Seeing none, hearing none. I hereby declare this public hearing for Bylaw 21-17 closed at 7:40 p.m. and will accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Montgomery?
I'll move we adjourn.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And that brings us to the regular public council meeting for July 7th, 2021. We're starting the regular council meeting at 7:41. At this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors? Councillor Sobel?
Not emergent, Your Worship, just have a committee report under 10.1.
Oh, okay. So you have a report?
I do, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from councillors? Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I also have a short verbal report under committee reports.
Okay. Any other committee reports coming in tonight? Is there anything from Community Futures? Have they been meeting? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Anything from administration?
Yes, Your Worship. Administration would like to remove item 9.4, the procurement policy. It's going to be coming back to council on July the 21st. We would also like to remove item 5.1, the delegation from Siksika Council. We would also like to move item 12.1, the reading of the bylaw, up to item 5.1, so the public that are here will be able to listen to the decision. And we also have 2 recognitions for item number 4 that will happen then as well for new staff. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have one under question between councillors and council statements. 14.1, I'd like to add something concerning the fire department. Anything else from council? No other statements or things between us? Seeing none, Then I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Corbeil?
I move the agenda as amended.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. We have no in-camera items. We do not have a delegation, but 5.1 has had a new designation. We're moving 12.1, the bylaw number 21-17, land use amendment, the ranch phase redesignation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council.
Item
Mr.
4,
Legault.
we have 2 recognitions.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. We do have 2 recognitions, and so I will turn that over to Mr. Legore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, first off, I'd like to introduce 2 new directors for the town. Mark Pretzlaff is our Director of Community and Protective Services, longtime employee. I'd like to introduce Mark. Congratulations, Mark. And we also have Jamie Dugdale joining our team as the Director of Infrastructure, Operation and Development Services. He's been with us 2 days. This is his 3rd day on the job now, so welcome aboard, Jamie. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to introduce our new Staff Sergeant for the town of Strathmore. We're pleased to welcome Staff Sergeant Mike Wiegels. Mike, do you want to say anything to, or Mark, do you want to say anything to council?
Thank you, Mr. Legore. Welcome, Mark, Staff Sergeant.
Thank you for allowing me to come here and appear before you tonight to meet all of you. I'm happy to be here in Strathmore. I've been working here. This is my 2nd week. So I've been making my rounds. I've been happy to meet more of the town staff and all of our stakeholders in the surrounding areas. I'm happy to be here in Strathmore. As all of you know, I'm a Strathmore resident and I've been so for the past 6 years. My wife and I and our family are happy to be here, and this has been a very good move for us. With that, I thank Your Worship for the opportunity and the selection to serve Strathmore and the surrounding area. And if it's permissible, if there are any questions, then I'm happy to answer any you may have.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Are there any questions from any of the councillors? Councillor Montgomery?
Were you an officer in town then for the past 6 years, or?
No, I was posted to Chestermere as a detachment commander for the past. I arrived there as the operations NCO and eventually was promoted to the detachment commander. But when we arrived in January of 2015, Strathmore really attracted us. We purchased a home here, and it's been a great place to raise our children since.
Thank you, and thank you, Staff Sergeant. Welcome aboard. I know in the interview process we heard so many good things about you. I think you're going to be an incredible addition to our town. For a long time, yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a plan anyway.
Thank you. All right, that now brings us to 5.1, the Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw Ranch Phase 5 Redesignation. And Megan, welcome back.
All right. Good evening again, Your Worship and members of council. I'm here to present 2nd and 3rd reading of Bylaw 21-17, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw. Earlier this evening, we held the public hearing, and so to summarize, this redesignation application aligns with all applicable statutory documents, including the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and the town's Municipal Development Plan. When appropriate, the comments that we received for the redesignation will also be considered during the subdivision review. Administration is recommending that, subject to consideration of the information given at the public hearing, that Council give 2nd and 3rd reading to Bylaw 21-17, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw, the Ranch Phase 5 Redesignation. That does conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Before I ask for a motion for 2nd reading, we can have questions for Megan again. If you have any questions, councillors, at this point, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. And sorry, I didn't ask this before. And it does have a little bit to do with the roadway. But so as we're designating this, or let's say we redesignated as R2, at what point does that area there become an actual roadway? Like, is that just something that's done through administration that would be designated a roadway, or how does that happen?
It will be part of the subdivision. So if their subdivision application is approved, when it's registered with land titles, that's when the subdivision, the road, and all of their lots will be, I guess, designated as road.
Okay, and so by rezoning this, let's call it, are we saying, yes, this will be a roadway now?
No, the road is part of the subdivision application. It's not part of the redesignation.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like some clarification from anyone who can offer something. I'm having a hard time separating part of the roadways with the redesignation. It's almost putting the horse before the cart, and I'm having troubles with accepting one, but there's going to be, I wouldn't say consequences, and I know it's not set in stone, but I'm having troubles in my mind, not in the same basket. Is there anybody from admin or anyone that can help me, I guess, mentally separate the two?
So, yeah, I guess if I can help you a little, are you wondering that if we do wind up approving something like this, then does that necessarily force the fact that Ranch Gate will have to be added in it? It kind of weakens anybody else's argument that might be against that roadway. So you see the two as being much more linked than they appear to be, or that they are actually. Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly what I'm thinking.
Sorry, Councillor Corbeil. Anyone from administration care to comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you bring Park Lane Drive in this, you jeopardize the legality of your public hearing. You need to keep these two separate. They are not connected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that advice. Any other questions? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Cox.
It's hard because I'm kind of feeling the exact same thing. The amount of people that live in that subdivision isn't going to, by deeming this redesignation, we aren't hitting that magic number that's forcing that road, is what we're trying to ask, without combining the two.
If I may, regardless of the decision tonight, there are already 92 houses that use Ranch Gate as the access in and out. The proposed subdivision, the full build-out, will result in about 133. What triggers the requirement for the secondary access is 100. So 100, yeah. So with the two, I believe it's about 255 houses. So the requirement for the second access is well beyond required.
I think we typically, Mr. Legore, if you can help me on the parliamentary procedures, maybe Kara as well. I haven't called on you yet. This is an appropriate time for questions only, and then if we want discussion, it would come after a second reading motion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so if there are any further questions then, and Councillor Corbeil, do you have a follow-up question?
I do, if I may. It's just a quick question. I'm just clarifying. So you're saying that there's already 93, so only 7 more dwelling units are needed for that the roadway? Is that what you're saying now?
I believe there's 92 houses. I can't remember 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. So there was some discussion in regards to buffer zones between R1 and R1Ns. So my question is, does that not still exist on both the north and south side of this proposed area?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes.
Do you know the distance, as a follow-up question, the distance between, let's say, the back lot of on the north side of R1 and a new residence, an R1 residence? It's a small space on my map here, but I'm wondering if anybody knows what that distance would be approximately.
My apologies, I don't have that information readily available.
Oh, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Through you, Mr.
Chuck
Mayor.
to the rescue.
We can get this distance for you here. Just give us a minute. If there's any other questions, we can go to those and then come back to this.
Thank you.
I'll pull up my map right now. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you. That was also my question, and related to buffer zones as well. And also in the letter, and I will take caution if I'm crossing that line that you mentioned, but the letter on page 13 in the second paragraph speaks to the environmental impact of the development. And I'm wondering if administration would speak to the any investigation that was done on environmental impact with regards to both what is referenced in this letter and those questions that were brought forward by Mr. Wright.
That's another part of the subdivision application.
So that's not for discussion here?
No.
Okay, I will take that. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
Right, yeah.
So thank you, Your Worship. I'm just pulling up my map here. We're looking at that colorful map. I'll get a page number here for you. What page is this one? Page 7 of 15. So you can see there's kind of 3 jotting out triangles there separating the R1, that's the yellow north side of properties, and the kind of the beige color is the R1N to the south. There's 3 triangles that jut out. At the narrowest point, that green strip is 13 meters approximately. And at kind of the tip at one of the triangles to the back of those R1 lots, it's about 35 meters. And we'll get the rear side here for you too. And the one to the south is approximately 10 meters distance there between the R1 and the R1N. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Thank you, Chuck and Megan. Any other, Councillor Peterson?
So my other question regarding the rezoning and also relevant to Mr. Wright's questions on safety, have we talked about activating spaces for greater safety, visual access to public spaces? Does that come into your planning in terms of thinking about rezoning, and if you could speak to that?
Councillor Peterson, it's a good question, and you know, this is, again, one of those ones that's, it's kind of more of a subdivision consideration than a land use designation question, and you know, that is something that we do look at the subdivision stages. How can we make it the safest neighborhood that we can? And that's kind of why we're dealing with access and some of this stuff. I know a lot of technical questions have come up tonight, and we're coming back to council to answer these questions about the subdivision next week. We just want to focus on the land use tonight.
I'm having a great deal of difficulty, Your Worship, separating the concept of density in community. You know, and I live in a community where density has been a major issue, and this community has handled it with an amazing amount of skill. And I know the things that you've brought in, and they relate very much to density, and they also relate to subdivision. So I'm having a great deal of difficulty when we talk about rezoning to density without asking the subdivision questions. And I can wait, I guess, but it's difficult for me to think about how you blend those two issues, because I think that it's almost impossible to separate them, but I can wait, I think.
I'd just
but
like to...
if we approve this density tonight, it impacts very much so then on the subdivision process. So I'm struggling.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just for response to that, you know, we want to thank council for being so involved with the subdivision technical stuff. You know, we love to talk planning, but we just have to go down the right avenues. Of course, this density that does affect some of those decisions, but we can't proceed with the subdivision unless we have zoning. We're just following the you know, the regulatory process here. We know it's a little bit convoluted. Thank you.
Councillor Peterson, are you okay?
No, it's just too bad.
Okay. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So just for clarification, so this area here that we're kind of proposing to rezone to R2, that's currently R1 or R1N all the way up to exactly the same spot? Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Another question, and then Deputy Mayor Cox?
So just to administration, or to Mr. Proctor and to Ms. Williams, would you consider this in terms of the additional 5 and the movement from 92 to 100 or 93 to 100 in terms of road? Would you consider this an incremental, a moderate increase then, in terms of shifting to a higher density?
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Peterson. I hope I can answer your question. You know, I think there's 133 lots for the Ranch Phase 5, 5B, and 7. This rezoning has an impact on those 133 lots by about 5 homes is what we think.
Right.
So, you know, without these 5 R1N lots, we'd be looking at about 128 in this area, in addition to the existing 92 on Ranch Garden and Close. Does that answer your question, Councillor Peterson?
I think what you've said, it's up to me to decide, make up my mind around it. But I thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
So if all of the factors we've factored in everything, why is this such a big deal for 5 houses?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Councillor Cox. You know, that Scott and Jane spoke earlier this evening, and you know, they're making this change due to, they're making this request, this application in response to change in markets. You know, that they can sell more houses when there's a mix of uses, and a very similar conversation occurred in 2019 with Edgefield, where they had some R1N lots that were changed to R2. And they're just doing it because, you know, Strathmore has a small kind of real estate inventory, and, you know, if these were all going to be R1N, that they might have, it might take longer for these to sell versus they can potentially sell some of these R2 lots in conjunction with R1. They're just offering a different product and responding to a change in market. Remember, these were last zoned in 2011, and a lot has changed in 10 years, and they're just trying to adapt to the current climate. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a follow-up to that then as well? Do we know in that area how diversified we are for housing markets? Like, are they all R1N and R2? Or is there some that are R1?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Cox. Page 7 of 15 there, it's not zoomed out all the way, but you can kind of see that near Archie Kleiber Trail, there's some orange and dark orange there. And those are your R2s and your R2Xs. We've got some R1 to the north in Ranch Close or Garden there. You know, there is a mix of uses in this neighborhood. Even north of Park Lane Drive there's a little cul-de-sac that has some different density R2 there. So there is a mix currently right now, and that's kind of what we're seeing in most of our modern communities, you know, Edgefield, Wildflower. There's a mix of different types of units, and you know, as planners, we think that, you know, the healthiest streets offer more than one type of product. The healthiest neighborhoods, you know, offer different kinds of houses, and we think that this is a very, you know, normal application to receive in 2021, and we think this is kind of represents a modest increase in density, and you know, our concerns were the on-street parking, and I think we've worked with Scott and Jane to come up with some architectural controls and address the street parking as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Peterson. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that Council give second reading to bylaw number 21-17, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, the Ranch Phase 5 redesignation.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, we can have discussion. And I've held off a little bit, but I do have a couple of things. And one is an apology from me, because I do that a lot. But I'm a lay person, And so this may come across as if I'm questioning the experts, but I've also lived in, my wife and I have lived in 5 different subdivisions around town. So over the 37 years I've been here. So I've seen the different housing, and I do have some concerns about this entire section being R1, R1N, and R2. From my own perspective, it's not so much the number of homes that isn't much difference, but it's the type of home. And I do have some worries about people, and people I think like Mr. Wright raised some good points, and I think he understands that there may be changes as years go by and different councils come in. But I think there is a concern about, R1 homes backing onto R1N or, partially on or very close to an R2. From my own point of view, I would have liked to have seen a little more balance from the developer. Maybe there was a chance to get some R1 in there. And the other thing that really worries me is the parking on that R2 across the street from the soccer. I think Deputy Mayor Cox mentioned this, or yeah, someone mentioned this, Mr. Wright did too, but I am a little worried about parking and traffic along that with that soccer field when we have R2 homes, and I understand the parking lot or parking spaces they get, but I also know there'll be more vehicles than that. And it worries me right at a soccer field where a lot of kids go to practice with families. So I have some concerns about this. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more balance. And going forward in the future, as I mentioned to Mr. Legore, I think this council towards the end of our term, and obviously the new council, needs to look at what does Strathmore want to do? Do we just want to have a lot of density, or do we want to try to sell the fact that we're a big community with a lot of land available, and do we want to make ourselves more attractive to people to possibly leave a crowded city and come to a country area where they can have bigger lots? And I totally understand that you also want to have price points where people can afford, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more balance in this area. And I don't, again, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how that works as far as the possibility, but I do have concerns about that row of R2 housing right along Ranch Gate there. Any other comments from councillors?
Yes, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson.
So my issue to Your Worship relates to, the mitigating density changes, and that's why I asked about the incremental or moderate increases to density, because nobody wants to see affordable housing in this community more than I do. But I really think that this is not a moderate increase to density. I think it's a big one, and I don't think that it's any different from Edgefield or from the changes that we've made on the west side of town to development there or into downtown south. I think that all of those issues are considered. But in those instances, it would seem to me that the process that came about in terms of redesignation were much more moderate or at least somewhat more moderate and more incremental. And that there was, the same needs, the need to develop affordable mixed-use neighborhoods and the need to embrace diversity, in this community, like all other communities in Alberta. If we aren't prepared to embrace diversity, it's going to definitely impact on how we grow and go forward. But it is, for me, the problem that I'm having with this is the rapid increase to density.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Councillor Peterson brought up a point that kind of sticks to me as well. When you referred earlier, Mr. Proctor, about the price point, that kind of, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. I like that. But then I started thinking about it, and if we go to somewhere like Edgefield, or even by looking at the size of these that they're building, the price point's not going to be a whole lot lower than a small residential house. The price point is going to be the same. It's just not going to have as much space for parking, grass, trees, yards. So Yeah, I like the fact that you're thinking that it is going to bring price points down, but I don't think I agree with that quite at this stage, so thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, just very quickly, there's comparisons being made to Edgefield, and I think they're very appropriate, especially judging from the type of housing that's proposed for this area. And bear in mind that this area already is zoned for narrow lots. But Edgefield, you know what? I mean, I'd certainly live in Edgefield tomorrow. I think that I'm very impressed with Edgefield and what they've done, and I get the sense that this is going to be a similar subdivision. And I also feel that there is a price point difference on a 50-foot lot bungalow or two-story compared to these houses. So I think we're presuming that the very worst, and the only reason I bring Edgefield up is that I think this subdivision showed that it's not the very worst. It's actually very good. So that's all I got on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's no further question or further discussion, I guess I'll call the question. We have a motion on the floor for second reading to bylaw number 21-17. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? So the motion is defeated. And that concludes the public hearing for this. And we'll wait to see how the developers handle this next phase and next decisions. And thank you for all your time and effort on this, staff and administration. It's much appreciated. We have no consent agenda. Item 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, the adoption of the June 16th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes.
I would so move, Your
Mark
Worship.
Pretzlaff. I love that. Councillor Peterson, all in favor, has made that motion.
Is that with amendments?
As amended, he said. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, as amended?
Thank you.
Thank you. So all in favor? And the motion is carried. That brings us to 8. There's no tabled items. Number 9, 2021 Seniors Tax Rebate Program, which is on page 12. Catherine, welcome. Are you speaking to this one?
I am. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. We're here to discuss the Seniors Tax Rebate Program. And tonight, Tammy Sieben is here representing FCSS. She has worked directly with this program since it began in 2019. This is our third time offering this program to the seniors in our community. There has been a slight change in the threshold as of July 1st. Changes are, singles are eligible up to $29,285, and couples are eligible up to $47,545. Council has approved a budget for this program. We do not anticipate going over the budget. We have estimated approximately 100 to 120 seniors who may access this program this year, whereas approximately 85 accessed it last year. We ask that Council accept this as information, and that Council direct administration to adjust the income threshold each July 1st in accordance to the Government of Alberta Seniors Benefit financial thresholds. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions for Catherine first before a motion, a possible motion? Councillor Montgomery?
I just have a motion ready. I'll move that Council accept this report as information and that Council direct administration to adjust the income threshold each July 1st in accordance with the Government of Alberta's senior benefit financial thresholds.
Thank you for that motion. Is there discussion now that we have a motion on the floor? Councillor Corbeil or Councillor Sobel, did you have discussion points?
I had a question, Your Worship.
Oh, you have a question? Okay.
Is it my goal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Thank you, ladies, for your presentation, and I'm certainly happy to support the information and the motion. But my question, I guess, deals with section 3 of the policy number 5103, which states, if I'm not mistaken, that that the Alberta Seniors Benefits Special Needs Assistance Program be based on line 150 of the tax year notice of assessment, and this amount is adjusted each July 1st by the government of Alberta. So I guess it's a technical question. I'm not sure why we're moving this when it's already in policy. Maybe I want to stop you from having to come back every year, if I'm correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Sobel, it's my understanding, and I wasn't present when this was all drawn up in previous years, but it's my understanding if there's a change to the government threshold, we would bring that back to council. But we can definitely look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Corbeil, do you have a question, or do you have a discussion point now that the motion's on the floor?
I was just going to say thank you again to our administration and everybody. I really think this is a great program and I am proud to support it.
Thank you. So seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much. Item 9.2, policy number 1502, Occupation Health and Safety Policy on page 14. Kirk, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship. I want to put forward an update to the town's occupational health and safety policy. You're provided with the updated document as well as the one that track changes. And it's just to better reflect, the town's practice and to be in compliance with the Occupational Health and Safety Act of Alberta. And in conjunction with that, we are applying for a CORE, which is a certificate of recognition later this year. And we wanted to make sure that our OH&S policy was in line with our CORE certification process.
Thank you, Kirk. Any other comments from?
No, if there was any questions or.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Kirk as far as this? Councillor Montgomery?
Just a motion.
Thank you.
Thanks. I will move that council adopt policy number 1502, Occupational Health and Safety Policy as presented.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the floor, is there any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Cox?
I just have a very happy question. Thank you very, very much for the red line versions. You do not know how nice that is. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox. So no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Kirk.
Welcome.
And are you presenting on the employee handbook as well? Yes, I think you are.
I am, Your Worship, and I just wondering if Doug Legore, our CAO, could maybe talk about the history of the handbook to council before we start.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Employee Handbook is a document that should be approved by council. It was approved in 2017. It does affect the monetary line item in the budget because there is a benefit. And current practice is, by policy of council, is that the CAO has control over that and can amend it and change it, and I don't think that's correct. That's unusual to have it that way. It should be at the purview of council when there's a change to benefits. This that we're presenting to you tonight is basically a housekeeping item. We want to rescind the policy 1300 and approve this new policy so that it is formally approved by council. Thank you, and we're prepared to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before I turn, I have a quick question. It's probably a serious question, but I read through this and I was looking at the whistleblower section, and I'm wondering, was there any thought to including a whistleblower section dealing with CAO concerns, as if to ask if the procedure would be, if there's a question or a concern about a CAO, and I don't mean you, Mr. Legore. Just calm down. But in the future, if something develops, is there anything in place that employees could look at as far as what happens if they find out that a CAO is in contravention of something serious? Who can they go to? Who can they turn to? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is policy in place on that. It's not in the employee handbook. Okay. And they will be coming to you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. My question is just, and I understand Mr. Lagore's point about council approving this. I agree. My question just has to do with, like, should we possibly defer this until we have the new CAO in place so that they can, you know, review and possibly reflect on it? And yeah, that's my question.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't get the question. I apologize.
Well, so we're in the process of looking at hiring a new CAO, and I'm wondering if we should wait for the new CAO to come on to, you know, kind of, let's say, add their fingerprint to this before we approve it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is no bearing on whether you hire a new CAO or not. This is a current program that we have in place, and we just want council to formally approve it. There was some changes made to it subsequent to 2017. We have backed those out of it. And it basically dealt with overtime during a SOL, and other than that, it was just some language changes. The basic benefit program is the same, and we just feel that council should be approving this. We'd hoped to have it before council previously, but we didn't do it, unfortunately, due to timing. Thank you.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, and I can make a motion if...
Okay, I'll just see if Councillor Corbeil, do you have a question?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Deputy Mayor Cox has a question, and Councillor Peterson has a question. You don't have a question.
Oh, there it goes. Technical difficulties. Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so my question goes just, you know, as a spin-off of Councillor Montgomery's. When the new CAO comes in, if he goes through the handbook and he sees something, he can then bring it to council for the changes that he requires at that point to put his personal touch on it. Can he not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. And in fact, it could even come back to council before that because we're looking at some other changes that we think, but we'll deal with that separately. Right now, we're just trying to prove what we have in place. Status quo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
One final question from me. Are we considered employees as councillors and mayor? And are we bound by any of these things? I know we have a code of conduct, but we're not under these care. Maybe you can jump in.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is an employee handbook.
Okay.
Council is eligible some of the same benefits that employees, but this does not pertain to council.
Okay.
This is an employee handbook.
My question then is maybe at a future time, administration, I guess I'd have to put this in a notice of motion or an administrative inquiry. I'll do that, but just like the idea, I really like the social media part of this. I think that it was very timely, very important, gives good, clear guidance to the employees of town, and I think it's something that could benefit a future council, the one that comes in the fall, obviously.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's one thing we're looking at for orientation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Montgomery, I think you were ready to make a motion. Councillor Corbell, you get to make the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council adopt the policy number 1303, Employee Handbook, as presented.
Thank you. And now that we have a motion on the floor, is there any further discussion? Seeing none.
Your Worship, I would just like to say that in addition to the notation that you made, I was also particularly impressed with the section around recruitment guidelines. Very appreciative of how that is brought forward, and I'm very proud of the fact that the town continues to be an employer that is highly conscientious in terms of recruitment and selection, inclusion and diversity. I'm very appreciative.
Thank you for that. So I will call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Your Worship, I would move that council rescind policy number 1300, Human Resources Policy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox. I had skipped that one. I'd missed it. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Sobel, do you have a discussion? Oh, your hand was ready to vote, is that the deal? All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kirk. That brings us to 9.5 or 9.4, I guess, on page 213, the Mid-Year Economic Development Report. Good evening and welcome. Kristen, thank you for your patience. Yeah, okay. Kara, you'll notice, someone note the person left and coming back. Thank you. Procedures, I guess. Kristen, welcome. We look forward to hearing you. And again, welcome to our staff too and our administrative team.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Kristen, do you mind just for councillors who may have missed or been away or didn't see this, could you introduce yourself and remind us, tell us what your position is with the town?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I sure can. Good evening, councillors. My name is Kristen Shima. I am the new Economic Development Coordinator for the town of Strathmore. I'm very excited to work with the town of Strathmore and the community. I hail from previously working with the town of Sylvan Lake. I have done culture and tourism with my background there, and also bits and pieces for economic development as well. I have done that position for 3 years, and I have owned my own business for 14 years within the city of Airdrie. I have background within working in the creative industries and working within business communities for nonprofits. So I have a blend of experience from that background. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. It has been a great opportunity connecting with the business community over my first 90 days. I have really enjoyed getting to know Strathmore. It's a vibrant, welcoming community that has incredible opportunity to keep growing. As an outsider to Strathmore, I know that's the last thing businesses want is someone telling them what their business needs. Instead, I took the approach to listen to every business and how their town could support them better. Important feedback was contributed from over 200 business visitations to create an immediate economic recovery plan based on their needs and ideas. Business feedback was organized into common themes: a strong belief of the community supporting and shopping local, a need for a strong vision and identity for investment and attraction, a desire to increase retail business downtown, town support to encourage local startups, including affordable commercial spaces, a need to connect highway traffic to areas of business and attractions throughout the community, and an increase of events and activities to bring in visitors. A few highlights of what economic development has completed these first few months are: a business newsletter sent to 1,214 active business license owners on June 9th, business hotline activation on town website and newsletter, 230 business visitations, hiring fair on June 13th and 14th with 170 local applications filling 100% capacity, local cooperative marketing initiative with Strathmore Times newspaper, Canada Day Market, Midway and Rodeo Bubble with restaurant and retail directory to support 500 on-location occupants over 5 weeks, and a Strathmore Farm and Flea Market. We have developed a progressive, action-driven COVID-19 economic recovery plan to respond and rebuild the position of the town of Strathmore. Initiatives for immediate support were created, providing maximum impact with low cost for local economic recovery. Before I get into the plan specifics, did you have any questions about the themes I heard from local businesses?
Any questions from councillors? Not so far then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Our short-term recovery plan will lead into mid-term initiatives and council-led development of a long-term economic development strategy. Our recovery plan focuses on 4 pillars: external marketing and tourism development, business engagement and support, policy development, and community engagement. These 4 pillars can deliver immediate relief while achieving long-term growth and recovery. The tactics used in each pillar have been selected based on cost and time resources that reflect our current budget. No additional funds were requested from our COVID-19 recovery plan. The COVID-19 economic recovery plan covers a timeframe from June to September with immediate actions and results. I'm going to walk you through the plan that we attached to the council report titled COVID-19 Economic Recovery Plan. I have some additional details to share, and I'm seeking council feedback on the plan. External marketing and tourism development. The rebranding that the rest of the team is working on is critically important to this piece. Especially for external marketing, this will help to refresh our identity when we advertise across the region. Our first cooperative marketing page in the Times was a success, and we're working with businesses on the remaining 8 pages for the rest of July and August. External marketing is led by Scott Garnett. Are there any questions I could take back to him or that Jeff may be able to answer for you tonight? Thank you. Business engagement and support. This pillar is one that we are able to activate very early on. It's where visitations sit, and the engagement provides the feedback to define our actions. I truly enjoy meeting local businesses, and I'm looking forward to my next 200 visitations. We outline the actions in this section in the attached report. Does council have any questions about these?
Questions from councillors? No.
Policy development. Our report mentions that policy development is a longer-term aspect. The hotel initiative is still in development. It should be ready by September for council's review. Tiered business license fees should be coming in by the end of July. We also identified some mid and long-term policies that we have begun researching. Are there any other policy areas that council would like from us to focus on?
Councillor Peterson?
I just have a very brief question with regards to the hotel promotion process that's heavily related to tourism. And are you thinking about relating it sort of to the, Strathmore hasn't been a tourist hub, but we've been a really good tertiary hub in terms of sports. So I'm wondering is that where you'll put a lot of your energy?
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. That is absolutely correct. We highlighted sports tourism as one of the areas with marketing for tourism and development. So yes, that is absolutely correct when we are working with our hotels. Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery?
And I've raised this before, but not when you were here, obviously. But so the city of Leduc has a pretty comprehensive package as far as like how to put on like a world class or kind of national level sporting event. And so I was just going to say, and the former mayor of Leduc highly recommended that people come and steal that basically. So if you want to go look at that for a policy, maybe to take a look at, or even just like not a policy necessarily, but just like a package you could give to like, different sports leagues in town to help them put on like a higher level sporting event essentially.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I have been in previous discussions actually with the City of Leduc's Economic Development Coordinator. They are a highly concentrated sports tourism community. So absolutely, I will take your recommendations forward with our planning and development as part of recommendations towards strategy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Kristen, I'm really impressed with the focus on Strathmore and the hotel incentive, and I love the idea of sports tourism. As a longtime high school teacher and coach, I know how when you can have a big tournament in a town in various sports, and there are some weekends there's hockey, basketball, all sorts of things going on, indoor soccer. So I think it can be a huge thing. I don't know if everyone on council read the Strathmore Times article when it talked about the Badlands and us pulling out of it. It had a quote from the Tourism Alberta representative who said in the interview that anytime she engaged the Badlands Association, they only wanted to talk about Drumheller and the Hoodoos and the area around there. And so it gave me some gratification that we did the right thing to try to focus locally on what we can do for tourism, and I like this hotel situation. I also love your attitude towards the Chamber of Commerce and meeting with all the businesses. And I believe Councillor Montgomery brought up the idea of tiered business licenses. Love that idea too. So I think you're really doing a great job, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have one more component of my presentation. The last one is community engagement. Moving economic development into the marketing and events team is very strategic. Strong community engagement is necessary to provide the foot traffic and buy-in to support local business. At first glance, neighborhood block parties may not seem like an economic driver, but by supporting local activity, we are building place attraction. This is a very powerful pillar, especially since our residents are our strongest brand ambassadors, influencing people to move and invest in Strathmore. Councillor Bauer brought up an idea of a campaign focusing on how Strathmore came together during COVID-19. We are developing a kindness campaign that closely aligns with this idea. There are many positive stories that residents and businesses can share about how our community pulled together. This is very valuable from a marketing and community engagement perspective. We're excited to see where the campaign goes. Does Council have any additions or suggestions on community engagement or the rest of the recovery plan?
Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would assume that you'd be working like with the Egg Society, correct? I just didn't see that in here.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Yes, absolutely. I've reached out to them and we're in constant contact. Thank you. They're part of it.
So. Also, I like the fact that we actually have like your position for anybody. I'd like to know how the town can support any kind of activities, functions, or whatever, and it doesn't have to be always money or nothing like that, but it's always nice to just stay like in the loop, connected, and I really appreciate the job that you're doing so far.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and it's a great opportunity. Thank you, Councillor Corbeil.
Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Kristen. I just want to start by thanking Kristen for her interest in our local chamber. She's been at I think every meeting that since she's arrived. So and very well received, and her attendance at our board meetings is very much appreciated. So thank you. This council did quite a lot of work earlier, or I should say late last year, in regards to agritourism. And I guess my question is, Kristen, have you been brought up to speed on that whole meeting, the agenda of those meetings and the decisions that were made as a result?
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. With the agritourism components, I am familiar with the sector, but in reference to the actual documents and information, I think I personally would have to review a bit more in detail. What documents are you referring to, and what partners or stakeholders had those particular documents?
Well, this was a retreat for council with a guest speaker and it was council's goal at that point to identify a direction for our community in the future. And one of the main components of that was the concept of agritourism. And I'm not going to get into it any further, but I would with that request that. That our CEO, I think it's appropriate to have you briefed on that. It was kind of a long process, and there's documents on it, and I think they should be made available to you if possible.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely, agritourism is a highlighted area as well for tourism, so I do look forward to those documents as well for review. Thank you. Great stuff. And I have one other question. I know you mentioned the Stampede bubble, and I know that's come and gone now. At least I believe it is. There was some pretty big numbers being thrown out prior to the bubble starting in regards to what that would mean for our community financially. Would you happen to know if any numbers were kept on that, or is there any information regarding just how that event affected our business community? Thank you. There are tools available for economic impact assessments for these type of events or areas of concentration when these type of things can occur. It would be done through the government of Alberta, and I could definitely connect with Travel Alberta for getting those tools available to us to measure that impact. Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify my question, I think that's what was used before the bubble started, that program. What I was curious about as to whether or not there was any actual facts or any discussions you've had with some of the 200 businesses you've contacted as to whether or not they were positively affected by this bubble. And I guess we're dealing focusing mostly on restaurants and probably just restaurants. I'm not sure what other areas would have been affected, but that was basically what I was curious about. Thank you, Council Sobel. We will check with the Ag Society and their delivery drivers as one of the areas to get information. Thank you. Thanks very much. Finalizing my...
Sorry, Kristen. No, it's okay. Deputy Mayor Cox has a question first, and then...
Thank you, Your Worship. So under business engagement and support, I'm not sure where the Strathmore Legion fits in. I don't know if it is something that you have visited, but they did reach out to our council to discuss partnerships and what they could do and how they could improve. And I don't know if you know where the Legion is, but it is a very big building in the center of our community. So I wouldn't mind if you maybe could reach out to them and see if there's anything that we can collaborate on, or if we can help them and they can help us. They are a big group for that senior population as well, and they're trying to dab into the younger versions, and maybe we can help them somehow. Just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. That's a great suggestion. I have connected with the Legion as well. They are an important community builder and stakeholder. Thank you for that recommendation. Absolutely. Thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, have they mentioned that 2022 is the anniversary of their building? That it's the 100th anniversary of the construction of that Legion. So it's one of the few standing old buildings in town that are quite nice. So we have talked about partnering, looking at things we can do to promote their activities, as well as helping them with the grounds and things. Maybe there are things we can do as a town with them. But that's a great idea, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Peterson.
I can wait until Mishima is finished, Your Worship.
Sure, okay.
Thank you. There is a lot of optimism among Strathmore's businesses and a lot of excitement to see the town deliver on economic development. I am confident in our plan, and I look forward to closely working with Council to develop meaningful long-term plans to grow our community. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for the opportunity to present and your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your advent here at the as we approach the end of COVID, and your work just brings about this huge hopefulness, something that this community is in desperate need of. So I'm very grateful for what I see in front of me. The question I had was 7 months ago, I was invited to join the Climate Caucus for small municipal electeds for the Canadian Climate Caucus. And one of the things that's resulted from that is the intense interest I've seen from really young people in our community around issues of environment. And I'm really proud of this community that we're moving to this carbon neutral environment. I think that it's one of the very positive things that this council has achieved. And I'm wondering if we've looked at opportunities to work with our Siksika and county partners in terms of opportunities for to address environmental tourism. We have these wonderful, wonderful people in our community who are the world foremost experts on prairie wetlands. And of course we have wetlands, and we have the Western Irrigation District, and it's, I think, a hugely untapped area. The man for whom the bridge is named, Thomas Sadler, is also the person who has built and designed the biggest and best bird sanctuaries throughout our province, and he's on our doorstep. And we have all these other people too in this community that have this immense knowledge, and then when you combine that with the Siksika understanding of learning from land, I just see enormous opportunities for environmental tourism going forward. And I just want to conclude, Your Worship, by saying this is an incredibly hopeful presentation. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox? Or no. Just a couple of things I thought, and thank you for your presentation. Everything looks so promising. I really look forward to it. I think your staff, you're all doing a great job promoting our town. Just a couple of things to maybe toss your way that you might want to think about. I've touted these gentlemen in the past, but there's a group of older gentlemen who come out from Calgary each Sunday and sometimes Thursdays. It's the Calgary Remote Control Sailboat Association, and they would like to have provincials here, and they would actually like to pursue getting nationals here. They love Strathmore Lake, even though there was a trampoline in one end of it today. I think it was the wind. I'm hoping it was the wind and not vandalism. The other thing you might want to check out, and maybe we can do some partnering with them, is the Calgary Kart Association. They might want to put you and Jeff through a racing school that the councillors went through, and you can let loose on the track. There's some really good things happening there. I think I passed on an invitation to council if they want to go and watch some of their races. So it might be really interesting for you. You could maybe use it as a team building in your department. Anyway, thank you very much for the presentation, and I guess we're looking for a motion to accept this information.
I would so move, Your Worship.
Thank you. We have a motion to accept this report as information. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Kristen. That brings us to item 10, committee reports. Reports from committees in which councillors sit. Who's up first? Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. My committee report is on the Chamber of Commerce board. And for quite some time now, the Chamber has been focusing on putting spotlights on the local businesses in Strathmore and Wheatland County. with the goal of creating traffic and awareness of where businesses are and a reason why people would want to go visit them. One of the more recent programs is called Member Monday, which involves a short and very eye-catching video describing one of our chamber members' business. The video is posted each week on social media. A more aggressive project has been worked on by our events committee for some time now and involved a grant application to the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, who has been tasked with identifying chambers in Alberta who were ready, willing, and able to engage in strategic shop local campaigns. I should note that the funds being used by the Alberta Chamber were provided by the Government of Canada for that purpose. Our specific project was focused on rediscovering local businesses, contests, videoing, and a whole lot more. It's with great pleasure that I wish to announce that the grant application has been approved and the Chamber has been awarded $15,480 to run the project, which is scheduled to start at the end of July. And that's all I have for my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson, did you?
Yes, thank you. Your Worship, last night, the Wheatland Housing Management Body had a meeting that was called a special meeting. And the reason for that was that the Minister of Health had requested additional information regarding the request around the proposed new build of a lodge, of a future lodge. So the information is being compiled and it will be sent to the ministries of seniors and AHS and to corresponding parties forthwith. The architectural firm of Barry & Associates will provide the additional information and also will include the additional opportunities that this proposed build will bring that we didn't have when the initial request to bring the information forward was given. We now know that this is a public-private partnership, as the building has an option now for a life lease independently owned. So we're hopeful that they have asked us for this additional information. And the Minister for Seniors is coming to visit the lodge in the next few weeks, so we're encouraged by that. The only other thing I would have to add is that Wheatland Housing Management Body passed the motion to pay the town of Strathmore, reimburse the costs that the town incurred on doing the geotechnical survey. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Any other reports? I think we have Councillor Corbeil's in writing, so that's...
And the library report.
And the library report from the director of the library. That's good. So I guess all we need to do is Councillor Corbeil.
I move to accept the reports for information.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. That brings us to item 12. Deborah, when you came to me at the start and you were telling me things that were to be struck out, I had a lot of wishful thinking. Do we still have the elections bylaw to discuss right now, or did we strike that to a later date? That's coming? Thank you. I was kind of hoping you'd give me better news, but that's okay. So we're on bylaw number 21-19, election sign bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. You got me all flustered. As you all know, there is an upcoming election this October, so administration has prepared an election sign bylaw. We have not had one previously in the past, and we just wanted to just do a short bylaw up just to let candidates know where the signs can be placed and what opportunities there are for them to place them. I do actually just have one change to the bylaw. In item 3.2, it says election signs for municipal candidates may be erected up to 60 days prior to election day and must be removed within, it should be 7 days of the election, not 3. And with that change, we are just asking that council give first, second, and third reading tonight.
Councillor Peterson.
I would move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-19, election sign bylaw.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Montgomery?
I'll move second reading of, bylaw 21-19.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the floor for second reading, is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Montgomery?
So one point I have, and for some reason I don't have the bylaw here. So if you look at 3.9B, it discusses the distance from, I'm assuming, an intersection. And I think it says 30 meters, and I feel like that's too big of a distance. That could prohibit placement of a lot of spots in town. So I was wondering if that could be amended to something like...
Mr. Mayor, could Councillor Montgomery speak into the mic, please? We can't hear the question.
Sorry. So I'm looking at 3.9B, which has to do with the distance from, I believe, an intersection. Sorry. And I just think that the distance that's in here is probably a bit too big. So I think it should be reduced, the distance for 3.9B.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. That information is actually pulled from the Highway Traffic Act, just for safety regulations, too close to an intersection. That's why we put that in there.
So like there's something that prohibits something closer than 30 meters?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Like you're saying that there's a regulation that prohibits the placement of temporary signs?
That's correct.
Closer than 30 meters to an intersection?
That's correct.
Okay. And so like where there's like, say, like one of those magnet signs, like those are pretty close to intersections a lot of times, like those are fine because those are not temporary?
I'm not aware of any magnetic, well, there actually is some, they're actually on the highway, the number 1 and the 8.
But within town though, there's multiple signs like I'm aware of that are pretty close to the intersection anyways.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there is some signs that are closer than 30 meters, we'll take a look at them, and if they don't meet the policy and provincial regulations, they will be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the other one that I have here is 3.11B. Signs may not be more than 1 meter above ground level, provided the signs are displayed indoors.
That's correct. That's part of the land use bylaw, that they can't be more than 1 meter above the ground. So we have just taken that from our current land use bylaw so that they both comply with each other. Unless it's in the window of your home, which the windows are quite often higher off the ground, which is allowed.
So they're just missing a word, unless the signs are displayed.
More than 1 meter above ground, provided the signs are displayed indoors. I don't see that. That's correct. We'll just add the word unless just before ground level.
Your Worship, I think we take out the word provided and put the word unless. That's the edit. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
That's the end of my comments.
Thank you. So as far as the motion goes, we've had some amendments since the motion, so. Just that one? Okay. Deputy Mayor Cox? Oh, you're waiting for the third reading? No.
No, I'm just...
Comment?
Yeah, please,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Thank you, Your Worship. This is with respect to Councillor Montgomery's questions. I'm just wondering if it's, when you speak of 30 meters from an intersection or a pedestrian crossover, you're meaning public property, correct? Because there are many houses that sit on corners of intersections, and should someone want to put a sign on, they can if they choose, if the property owner allows them. Is that not true?
That's correct, Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor for second reading. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council give unanimous consent to a third and final reading of bylaw number 21-19, election sign bylaw.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor for third reading.
I just have a question. Did we need to include that one amendment, or because it's typographical, it doesn't matter?
It's just
Through you, that's just a typo.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for third reading. Question, Councilor Montgomery?
Not that I don't believe about that rule, but I'd like to see, before I actually vote on this or like vote to approve it, let's say, I would like to see the actual regulation regarding temporary signs, you know, close in proximity to intersections. Please and thank you.
So procedure-wise then, Kara, would you be able to weigh in? Do we vote on it at third reading, even if he has a question, or are you trying to find the answer right now? Okay.
We're actually looking to see if we can locate that for council right now.
Thank you. This might be a good time since we're waiting for the information. When I went to Siksika on Thursday, July 1st, my I Stand Against Racism sign was up. And I think since I haven't decided if I'm running for re-election, I don't want the perception that I'm gaining a benefit by a possible campaign sign up. So I think at this point, it might be good if we can take down my sign. I don't want anyone to think that I'm campaigning right now and that I'm using that racism billboard as a way to further myself. So I'm not sure who to talk to about that, Mr. Legore, but perhaps it'd be a good time to come down.
So noted, Mr. Mayor. We'll look after it.
Thank you.
If I could, to administration, like if you could bring that back for like maybe the next meeting or something like that. Like I don't mean to hold up the meeting while you guys find that. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you have a bylaw to proceed with. You need unanimous consent. Just defeat the motion, and this bylaw will be deferred till the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll call the question and okay, we have to have unanimous consent. Okay, thank you. All in favor of the motion? And opposed? Okay, thank you. So the motion is defeated, and I imagine the information will come back to us.
Thank you.
I wanted to add something into that election bylaw about former students of mine who took some of my campaign signs in 2017 and stuck them up on their walls as if that would help anybody. Not me, that's for sure. Anyway, we move on to urgent business. I see we have none. Questions between councillors and or council statements. I have one on the fire department, and if you'll indulge me, I have a short one on something else. I sent out an email today to council, our Mr. Legore as well, that Mayor Bill Robertson passed away today after a battle with cancer. And I just wanted to acknowledge him. He was a true gentleman. He was very measured in how he dealt with his job. He was an incredibly strong person in procedure and parliamentary procedures and meetings, and he was often turned to for advice and how to move forward on various things. He was genuinely a good person. He did many things for his community, and he will be missed. I didn't get to know him as well as I wanted to, but I have reached out to him at different times for advice and questions, and so I'd like to, I will be putting something on my mayor's page about this, but I just wanted to publicly say I extend council's support to the family. We're very, very sorry at the loss of Bill Robertson, and we hope that his family, with time, will gain strength, and the good and the legacy that he has left behind will last for many, many, many years. So thank you. The second thing I was going to just mention in my councilor statement is that I wanted to I sent an email to Mr. Legore to pass on my thanks and gratitude to the fire department as well as our operations team for their work on July 1st. I want to thank all the staff who also worked very hard to make this different July 1st come off and be very good for the residents. The fire department, we had a fire marshal, Marshal Sean Freeman, on site at the fireworks. So that was very reassuring. And we also had the operations crew wet down the area twice during the day on that incredibly hot day to make sure that it was a very safe event and safe fireworks for all of Strathmore. And just wanted to show my appreciation. And just before we go on to the administrative inquiry response as far as fire department, I just wanted to comment that what jumped out at me on the response was that 64% of the fire calls are taken by our full-time officers, which to me shows how good it is that we have full-time people in our department. We have an outstanding fire department. I think it's moving along well, and I know Mr. Legore is working hard in looking for a potential fire chief. But I just wanted to extend my thanks and gratitude to the fire department. And having talked to Mayor Janung from Cochrane, I know how incredibly expensive a full-time fire department would be. So the fact that we're able to mix volunteer firefighters with full-time firefighters is just incredible for our town, a town of our size. Thank you. So that moves us to Councillor Peterson.
Sorry, Your Worship. Thank you, and thank you for acknowledging all of that. I just wanted to pass on my thanks to Hope Covenant Church, Your Worship, for the care that they gave to seniors in community during this terrible heat phase that we had, and also to the many, many people in community who reached out to their neighbors, particularly to seniors and vulnerable populations during this. And finally, I just wanted to express my sincere appreciation to Siksika for how welcoming they were to us when we attended their ceremonies on July the 1st. They were so kind and welcoming, and every speaker, many of them residential school survivors, spoke of their hopefulness in moving forward together. And it was somber, but very encouraging, incredibly forgiving, and extremely hopeful. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. That brings us to administrative inquiries, 15.1, the inquiry response to the Code of Conduct bylaw. Are there questions or comments? Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're prepared to answer any questions.
Any questions from councillors? Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. It was probably my fault. It wasn't very clear. What I was kind of wondering is how does administration receive one, and then what do they do with it? Like I get that council all gets it, but if there was a formal policy, I guess it wouldn't be up to council as to if it was public information or not public information. I was just trying to keep council out of procedure of how it's accepted, and I get the council can decide for to investigate or not. That's where it was a little bit that's where it's a little bit sticky, and I'm not sure how to go from there in that handling phase, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's entirely at council's purview how it's handled. Whether it's public information or dealt with in camera and brought to the public at a later point, that's strictly council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Then we move on to 15.2, administrative inquiry response regarding the fire department. Any questions for administration there? Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank our acting chief for all this information. I really appreciate it. And I get, for some reason, I get a number of, I tend to get, for some reason, a lot of questions about the fire department. There seems to be a lot of interest anyways about how the fire department operates. I was wondering if it'd be possible to get a breakdown of of the calls, so like, you know, like the ones that the full-time are handling versus the on-call, I've been asked about, yeah, basically as far as the breakdown goes of the types of calls that are being handled. No, I did. Let me see this here. Yeah, so it breaks it down like as a whole. It says, you know, 64% are being handled by the full-time response, and then 36 are volunteer response. But then it goes on to break the entire amount down by type. But I was asked about, as far as it's broken down by type, further broken down by who is handling those particular types of calls.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll see if that information is available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I've had a question from a gentleman a couple of times, Mr. Legore, and maybe you can just comment on this. He was quite upset with the charge-out call for a fire at his place. Can you comment on that as far as other municipalities go in their approach to charging out for fire service to businesses and things?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's quite a common practice now across the province where municipalities are charging out for fire calls.
Thank you.
Typically, they're covered by insurance.
Thank you very much. And then that brings us to 15.3, Administrative Inquiry Response concerning the funding of developer new homes. Any questions for administration there? Thank you. I guess we have no questions for you, administration. So that brings us to item 15, which is adjournment.
I can move. We adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:10. All in favor? And the motion